All right, here we go. Yep, the live stream started, and then I coughed. I always would start the stream and then cough because it's the absolute wrong way to do it. But I'm having so many challenges with audio and stuff. We had some software updates on my end. Wynn's new computer wasn't quite connecting with the internet on her end. But that's okay. We're going to have a conversation. We haven't had an opportunity, and we want to talk to each other, and we want to make it available for everybody else. So my name is Dennis Eversen. I'm from a small town in Wisconsin, right on the Lake Michigan. The town kind of stuck out on the lake. It was called an air-conditioned city because it stuck out on the lake. And a town of 13,000 people. I grew up, with the river 2 blocks from my house, outdoor as a kid all the time, played outside. Mom sent us out when it was time to eat. She called us back in. As long as we could hear her, we were good. We could be on the block, down the block, swimming, whatever we were doing. It didn't matter. Summer, winter, and we had cold winters. We just dressed for it. Take little plastic bread bags, put it over our socks, and then put our boots on so they wouldn't get too wet. And then we had a potbelly stove down in the basement. We'd put wood in it, and we could hang up the clothes and watch the steam come off as all that snow came off. And so very much, a while back, they talked about free-range kids, very much free-range, ran all over the place. So a totally different background than my friend here, Wen Chen. We met, you came on a show with Lynn Morris, shared about some of the things that were happening in your beloved country, China, a place that you absolutely love, people that you absolutely love. And I fell in love with your love for your people, for your culture, for your history. And so after you did that show with him, I'm like, I want to talk to her too, and I might as well share it with others. And so we had some conversations. And then the last 3, we kind of talked more on science and the pursuit of truth, and what's brought you to the place where you're at and the work you're doing. And then on my end, it would be religion, I guess, and the pursuit of truth or theology, different ways it could be expressed, because I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and, I would be identified as a Christian. I'm actually an ordained bishop, those types of things. And yet we're together from totally different paths, totally different backgrounds, totally different cultures, environments, but we're so much the same, and in our pursuit, we've come to this same place. And for me, that place is what we've seen in the 250-year anniversary of our country, right? A country founded on the idea that we were given by God, created by God, and given these rights of life and freedom and the ability to own things, that pursuit of happiness, and our willingness to speak for others that maybe don't have a voice, especially for those that don't have a voice, and to say there's value in life, there's value in humanity, and it should be preserved, it should be protected. That's a little bit about me and a little bit about how I got there. And so for you, some of the fascinating things in your story, and one of the things I thought about after our last conversation was nature and nurture, or like who we are as beings who were created to be, humanity, and then the environment around us, how that shapes us. And for you, you came to a place where you were like, wait, in your words, brainwashed, right? And when I hear that word and I think about it, and I think of conditioning, I think of training. And so for me, my conditioning, my training was a lot of freedom, right? And I loved freedom. And I loved for other people to be free around me. And I loved the nature, woods all around, fish, water, the Great Lake right there. I mean, just incredible environment of life, and loved it. And so for you coming up, share a little bit about what your environment was like as we kind of lead into the story. And I'll mute myself to help with our audio things and then remember to unmute myself later.
So, Dennis, I'm so happy to be here again. It's always fun to talk to you. And I mean, I wish I can be have a like a childhood like yours. Like that's my dream childhood. I never had one. And yes, I remember before I went to school, like when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I spent a couple of years with my grandparents. And I remember it was like in Fujian province across ocean to Taiwan. And it's like a mountain and the ocean, and my grandpa used to take me to mountains to see nature every day. And he has goats. I just walked with the goats. And then I went to school. I was taken back to my parents, workplace. And then I just lost all of those. I had to go to school. Life was miserable. And my parents, I spoke about this in the previous two interviews. They were always worried about, you know, that I cannot be too outstanding and I cannot have too much freedom because they just worried whenever I leave home, I could be kidnapped by someone. Right? It was post-cultural revolution in China, and the persecution to intellectuals was still very bad, and also the society was not safe. I was the place my parents worked for was actually a prison, and they actually worked in the factories where they hired prisoners to work.
And you
So
could
they
get
were
in
worried.
trouble not because you did anything wrong, not even if being in the wrong place. You could just get in trouble because someone wanted to get you in trouble.
Yeah. So I most of the time, I was either at school, and right after school I had to return home within 5 minutes. And then during those time, right, when I was at home, I was locked in my bedroom. I was not allowed to leave my bedroom. So it was funny, like my parents worked for prison and they also turned their home into a prison. They turned their children into prisoners. And I remember during those long years, I was either detained in school, detained at home, and the only entertainment I had was reading. My parents, they were well educated. They still had a very good collection of books when I was a child, like ancient Chinese literature. And I know many of them, ancient Chinese were in a different grammar from modern Chinese, very, very concise. They used to carve those characters on bamboo, so you better not carve too many characters. Otherwise bamboo would be too heavy, right? And so ancient Chinese were very concise, which the advantage of that is that because it was so concise, you cannot really change it. Like if you change a character, you cannot, it would not sound okay. Like it would not be made
Yeah,
meaningful.
because
So
really, each character in itself carries meaning. It's not like English or something where just it's a letter and that pretty much represents a sound or whatever. There's actually imagery with it, right? And complex meaning, and then whichever other symbol letter is with it would kind of affect that meaning. So it's very mathematical, you could say, very precise. Is that
yeah, it was
correct?
very precise. And the reason I mentioned that, it was like before, when I read the literature my parents collected, I found like they had a translation into modern Chinese, right? And the modern Chinese translation actually was distorted by the government. They would say, oh, this means this, and that, and that's the background. And it was told, the modern Chinese translation was told in a way of the communist Chinese government way, to distort the original meaning, distort the original background, to demonize ancient Chinese culture. They say, oh, these are all stupid. They're superstition, all of this. But I was able, I learned to read ancient grammar. I can read the original uh, context, right? So I read about those, especially the poems. Like the poems, there's no way you can change a poem. It's not going to rhyme anymore, right? So, and I was so fascinated. Like I spent all my free time reading, and those stories carried spiritual value. I think what touched me most was like when I saw like people hundreds or thousands of years ago, they stick to the truth. They were willing to sacrifice their life, uh, to speak out, to stick to the truth. I was so fascinated. I said, like, wow, one day I want to be people like them. But I may never have such opportunity because we live in a world, we don't have a war. We don't have, we don't always have those opportunity to do something like what they did, right? And I also loved reading those stories about being persistent, perseverance. Like, I mean, I always remember that famous book we call The City Old Man. So the city old man lived in a mountain, and the mountains like blocked the village from outside world. So people lived a difficult life there because the resource cannot come into the village. So the old man, the city old man, started to move the mountain by just moving the rocks piece by piece. And people just laughed at him, said like, no way you can move a mountain. You're just one old man. And he said, I'm going to do all I can do in this lifetime. My children will continue the mission. My grandchildren will continue the mission. And one day we will be able to move the mountain. And eventually, God, like a heavenly father, was touched by him. They just moved the mountain and split the mountain and made a road uh, available. And I was always fascinated by those stories. Like, see, like if you're persistent, right? If you stick to the truth, eventually the world will change. Not because of what you do, because it was ruled by there. God will see that and they will make it happen. And that was what motivated me in all those years, because that gave me hope.
Well, and going back to the original language for you gave you a foundation, right? It
Yeah.
was a real solid foundation because it's not only the words, it's the reality of the history. And I think that's so important. That's one thing I would encourage people. You know, we there's only so much we can do for anybody else, but I want to encourage people, know your history. Know who you are, your family history, your cultural history, whatever your background, wherever you come from. There's so many people around us, stories around us, and to know the reality of it because we can have something firm, something that's secure when we see all the other stuff around us, right? All the lies, the deceptions, the craziness that goes on, people wanting to kill us, right? You and I both, maybe different people, maybe the same people. There are people in the world that would rather kill us than talk to us right now. There really are. And that's very strange. That's a very odd thing. But no matter what, having those foundations. So that's so beautiful that you had that ancient, original writings that go back so far. And then you can know the people, right? And you can even learn more about them. So that's awesome.
Yeah, when you read about those history, like you're learning about those people, right? Those fascinating people, who is just like willing to sacrifice themselves for others and made the whole world meaningful, right? And I just feel like very, very frustrated after I grew up a little bit older. Like, I went to college and look at around people surrounding me. I mean, I just don't see many people understand it. Like they also, oh, that's just textbook. In reality, who can live like that, right? And for many years, I also feel like, okay, what's the meaning of the word if no one believes in the truth? And until I eventually came to the United States and I look back, I look at the, life in China, I realize, oh yeah, of course, in China, if you speak out, right, you get into big trouble, right? Because the government, the Communist Party government, they would not want you to speak out. Like people already were so conditioned by all these political movements in China, like my parents, my brother, they were so conditioned by all kinds of persecution that they already learned like, oh, the best way to protect ourselves is to do whatever the government wants you to do and forget about the truth, forget about the courage. And they are used to living like this until
And
one
if
day they will hit.
yeah, right. And if you really sell into it, if you really go with that group, you can get some pretty good rewards for a little while, and until you don't.
Yeah, for a little while until you don't. So, yeah, I mean, in my blog, I wrote about my brother, and he chose the opposite path from me. Like we grew up in the same family, very, very similar background. We both got PhDs from top research institutes, and I chose to come to the US to finish my education. And I mean, I became a human rights activist for Chinese dissident groups. And my brother chose to join the Chinese government and live a very good life. He lived a very good life for 30 years in China until 3 years ago, actually 2.5 years ago, he was all of a sudden arrested and took into prison and sentenced. He was recently sentenced to 17 years in prison without any trial, without any crime. Like, they don't even bother to tell you what kind of crime he committed because, the more they tell, right, the easier for you to argue back. No, he did not do this. He did not do that. If the government do not tell you anything, there's no way you can argue. So that's the story of my brother, like who chose to give up the truth and stick for to the benefits in ordinary life, and eventually he got into trouble. And the cause could be very simple. Like one of my cousins told me, like the reason my brother was sentenced to such a heavy prison term was because he was appointed by one of the officials, and then that official lost his power. So everyone appointed by that official were prisoned because Xi Jinping does not trust them. And easiest way is like put everyone into prison so that they cannot go back to the original position.
If your only value is part of the system, then you can easily be replaced. Anybody can be part of the system. So it doesn't, and like we said, you can get rewards for a short time, and that's a lot of what's done. The influences in different areas and the way they get into groups, a little money, a little drugs, a little whatever it is, give them a little of this and give them what they want. And as long as you're doing what you need, but the system changes, get rid of it. And it's incredible, because someone's appointed and they're worried about loyalty and this other. So there's already a problem in that system, right? Incredible dynamics.
This is also what we learn through history, right? If you look at the history of China or any other countries, right? And this happens again, and again. And modern people just do not learn the lesson. I just feel like it. I remember when I read ancient literature, like Chinese literature, like they were like, stories about all these things people did in old time and how they committed these crimes because they are like the supervisors asked them to do so, and then eventually they all got punished, right? They lost everything. I mean, we learn this from history all the time. Like if you do good things, you will be rewarded. If you do bad things, eventually you will be punished. If not in this lifetime, in next lifetime, eventually you will get punished. People don't believe that. And now, like I've been living, at my age, I already saw many, many such cases, like those who, like people like my brother, right, eventually got into big trouble. And he's not the only case. So I would say like that is what I learned in my journey, like since childhood. I learned all these values from traditional Chinese literature because in China we don't really have a religion system or anything. I was not able to access much of those. If I can access any, they were distorted as well. I think in one of the episodes I told you about how the Chinese government, uh, like infiltrated into religion and changed them. Like for example, like they can, they have like a government Christian churches, and then they teach communism there. And you go there, you thought you're Christian, but actually you're not a Christian, right? They do the same in Buddhism, and to Buddhist temples, to Taoist temples, to all religion. If they say, okay, you have a system, they would send party members there to dominate your religion and convert your religion into something else. Dennis, you're still muted. You are still muted.
Oh, it's all control. So the government has to control everything. Thank you. Good job. And in religion, you look at how government everywhere, even recently, with the newest pope coming in, there were cardinals that were there that were, had the stamp of approval, let's say, of the CCP. And they don't get that unless they're in line with that system, which is the opposite of the Buddhist religion or the Hindu religion or whatever the group is. I mean, it's basically a government being a god, a system being the god. So you have to destroy all other gods, all other religions, even education, because you got to learn from the government. They'll tell you what to think, how to think, and wow, it's so destructive.
And that is also the reason we're here today, right? We want to talk about this because if you don't talk about this, people don't realize that. And I just feel like this is just a little bit of contribution we can make to this world by pointing this out and continuously pointing this out. I think both of us have been doing this for decades. And, this is just our little contribution. And now I also want to touch the topic of perseverance, like being persistent in doing this, not to give up, right? I think what troubled me the most in past years was that I thought, like, okay, I did so much, like I worked so hard, but I really can't do much change. I cannot bring much change to this world. I mean, there are many influencers like Elon Musk. I'm not one of them. I can only sit here doing this little podcast interview. I can give a talk in a local, like a Rotary Club, and that's all I do. Like, what's the meaning of that? And then I would think about that story, that like a legend of like a silly old man trying to move a mountain. And then I can encourage myself, okay, I'm that silly old man trying to move a mountain. But I know there are many, many silly old men like me. And we can make it happen. And eventually, like maybe, God will help us to move that mountain.
I think about, when you were in Topeka recently and we were able to meet over there, you had mentioned that you spoke to someone that still believed that COVID was like from the wet market and stuff. And, just being able to just help people learn a little bit. And that's just really a symptom of the problem, right? We have such an environment around us now that we are bombarded by propaganda, or you could call it advertising, influencer, right? All these things and now with technology, with the advanced algorithms that they call artificial intelligence, these things, they're able to take the data and I've told people for a few years now, there's an item in a warehouse waiting to be shipped to your house. When you buy it, they're just waiting to tell you that you're going to buy it. And when they tell you to buy it, they're going to ship it to you. They're all ready. I mean, that's the kind of control. And we love to think that we're not controlled, but they know what, next thing to feed you. And you look at people and they get caught in the scrolling on these screens, and you look at the data companies behind it, the ways they're using it to influence. There was Roku recently was bought out. And the whole reason it was bought was so that a streaming service could use it to advertise, figure out what people's watching, when they like to watch it. I mean, not only what you watch, what time you watch it. They know when you're sad on a Saturday night and eating ice cream because they already got the data of you buying the ice cream, and they know the movie you're watching, your sad movie, and then they can influence you on the next thing you want to buy. And so all these things around us, to just be able to help people to know that, like in our journeys, both of us would share in our journeys, there was times we believed things and then we're like, wait a minute, that wasn't true. So just helping people to say, look around you, learn the truth. It's kind of ironic that Fauci's autobiography just came out too. But I laughed when I heard that yesterday. I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah, I just feel like the good thing about truth is like once you know the truth, you eventually like know like there's no way they can fool you again, right? And this is the beauty of it. Like you can brainwash someone, lie to someone for a long time, but once the victim learned the truth, you cannot turn it back anymore. It's like most of the cases. You're still muted, Dennis.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, and then so the biggest way, I guess, for you, well, let me just go on a little side thing for a moment. I love the beauty of creation for me because I see it as word-based creation, not science-based, but word-based. So came out of God speaking and seeing. And so when I hear about the words that you're able to go to, the ancient language and how powerful that is, and now we're in a time where we have these, I call them advanced algorithms imitating intelligence, AAII, or they call it artificial intelligence. It's not really intelligent, but it's a word-based system, right? They use the large language model is the biggest one that we're seeing, and how it's changing everything. And of course, for me, in scripture, you go to the Tower of Babel. There was one language, and man was building this big tower, this big monument to himself, and going to be great. And, they're going to be better than God and all this stuff. And God confounded the languages then. And now all of a sudden, language is coming together and being used in powerful ways. And to me, it's very ironic because man always tries to control God, tell God how he's supposed to act, what he's supposed to do, all these kinds of things. As a created being doing that, and I absolutely have no doubt we're created, I see it everywhere. But as a created being, trying to take our creator and make him into our own image, trying to control him. And now, as a created being, man has made this artificial thing, created this thing that is going to already more and more controlling man and becoming God. Well, what should we do? What decision should we make? Well, ask the AI. It can make a better decision than me. How do I process its data? It can do it better. Let it control. And of course, then you also have the nefarious side of also man that wants to control other man and using that. And it's an incredible thing that as a created being, we try to control God. Now we've made a created thing that's becoming our God, that's becoming a control around us. And that's why I think it's so important to have those foundations, those histories, the knowledge of what people have really done, that we can learn from history. The good and the bad, right? we need to know it. What are these ideas, these philosophies, these ways of life that didn't end well for anybody, and what are the ones that do end well for others, that are productive? And we can see good and bad, or life and death, I think. On the biology side, there are definitely things that are productive for an environment and very destructive to the environment, those types of things.
Yeah, if we come back to talk about the topic of nature, right? I believe that Mother Nature always have the solution. I mean, we are just trying to do our best as human beings, like not to get into trouble, right? Not to distract ourselves. I think that's the whole purpose of us living here. Like we don't want to, to like destroy ourselves, like because of a stupid action, right? Like AI is one of the problems. You can see like artificial intelligence created all this false information and like brainwash people or mislead people, and they eventually get into trouble. Like I've heard cases like people believed in the medical advice, from Chat GPT, and then had to file lawsuits against OpenAI. We probably will hear more and more cases like that, right? Like you believe in the wrong source of information because you fully trusted that. And also, I mean, as a biologist, I'm probably like more familiar with those cases of like people trying to play God, like by doing gene therapy, do like a genetically modified baby, and it's the fact is like life is so complicated, more complicated than anyone can imagine. But there's always some scientists so like they can manipulate that, they can control that, but they actually can't. So a recent case was published in a science magazine that in China there was a team of doctors, medical doctors, who did gene therapy to a 6-year-old girl, injected like trillions of virus into her brain, trying to fix, like a genetic disease of her, and she died in a week. And that medical team just hided this case for like 2 years. They actually got money from the girl's family for this kind of so-called treatment. It was actually a like one person clinical trial to test whether their hypothesis was right. They said they claimed to the parents of that little girl, say they did this in mouse, they did it in a monkey, and all worked, right? They said, okay, since mouse and the monkey can work, your daughter, well, we can also fix her. And the parents like contribute like $860,000 for that treatment, and their daughter died. And then those Chinese medical research team, like they hid these facts and published the big articles on Nature. That's another magazine run by UK. It was also a world leading science magazine, and that is a huge scandal now in the science field, like because gene therapy was like trendy like 30 years ago, and it didn't work because whenever you try to modify someone's gene, you realize, okay, you fix this, but you break another 30 things, and you get into much worse scenario. That's why, like people don't talk much about gene therapy now because of the practical reasons, like the practical difficulties behind this gene editing technology. And but this can happen in China, and this can happen in the modern time. Clearly showed like people completely forgot this history, and people are overly confident about what they can do, and eventually they get punished by nature, because the reality is like you don't know much. You cannot create a life. You cannot even create a cell, to be honest. You cannot even synthesize a cell, right? This is how fascinating it is. Like nature can put everything together, work in such a perfect way. You and me, like we can sit here, move and talk, and we cannot create a cell like from chemicals. We can't even do that as a human being. So that's how little we know. And but there are always people who don't understand how little. They're so ignorant. And we see this among biologists, among medical doctors, and we see this like in those who work on AI, right? Like they want to create this and that. But I just feel like eventually we either stop, we correct ourselves, or we learn it in a hard way. In a hard way, like more death, more sacrifice.
It's kind of the dark side of science and truth and technology, right? We can do it along with nature, right? And that's not what we should do. However we're coming at it, if we look at nature, it works, right? Like you said, it like always has the answer. So we don't try to change it. We don't try to remake it. We work with it. Now it'll teach us things like herbs and minerals and whatever different things and ways we can mix things together and make salves and tonics and what all different kinds of things we can do, help with our health and our life and different things we can do around us, all that type of thing. But the working with nature and not controlling it. So even things like atomic research, you can look at atomic energy and breaking an atom and all this, releasing this power, and you can make a big bomb and destroy lots of lives and figure out how to make smaller bombs and different bombs and bigger bombs and all these different things. Or you could harness the energy and power a city and help produce for people, whatever. Just not going against nature, right? But working with it, not polluting it, not destroying it, not raping it. We can use its resources. So the word I would use is stewardship. good stewardship
Yes.
of us, of our environment, and that around us.
Totally agree, like including artificial intelligence, right? I just feel like stewardship is very important. Like, yes, chat, AI can give you medical advice, but someone has to approve it. because because like, if it's all machine, they wouldn't care if this advice can kill you, right? But as a human being, they would try their best, because if they approve it and you die, they have to, take responsibility for that. No one would want to risk that, but you can't hold a machine accountable for the medical advice they give you. It's just one example. For everything they create, we need to have the last say. Human has to be the responsible for the answer by giving it the last check and say, yes, it's okay, it's right. And I would say like that's the way to go. I mean, we can make good use of the modern technology, right? Like, a lot of like medical technology can make people live for longer, more healthy. It's just great. But we are the ones managing those technology and make good use of it. And if we don't make good use of it, eventually we become victims of this thing.
And just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something.
Exactly. Like
Medical
genetically modify a
science.
baby, right? Yeah. Like, because there are paths like that can lead you to hell, like, can destroy the whole humankind. Like if you make a virus, right? You can get all of us into big trouble.
I don't see any good reason to be. There's lines. Any good reason to cross certain lines and things like that. Just because we have the knowledge, we have the ability, doesn't mean we should do it.
Yeah, but the people will do that for their personal gain, right? For example, like the excuse of like creating a genetically modified virus. It was like in China, was like, oh, if we make a virus ahead of time, we can make the vaccine ahead of time, and then we can sell the vaccine all over the world. We're going to make big money because we have the virus, we have the vaccine, right? I mean, you can see it's evil. It's pure evil, right? And it's all of this stuff, like people, like those research teams doing this, like a genetically modified baby, like in China, like they genetically modified the genome of two baby girls, and that caused a big trouble. Like I don't know what happened to those baby girls. It's just like the genetic therapy, like you introduce mutations to their genome, most likely they will die. And if they don't die, this genetically modified sequence can pass down to the next generation. And you don't know if many of those accumulate for generations, that may eventually cause terminal diseases in human beings, and that can cause to the end of this race, human race. So all of this, like, but the people when they did it, they just do it for fame, for money, for personal gain. And that's also why we, as bystanders, we need to speak out, right? If you see some problem, you say, hey, this is not right, right? All of us have to speak out. And then it's also the time for us to say, okay, can you stick to the truth? Can you continue to speak the truth? After 20, 30 years, no one listened. Would you continue to speak the truth?
I find one of the things that I share a lot in the last, I don't know, year, 6 months that people don't really pay attention to, don't really receive and don't really respond to is drinking more water. I'll be like, if you drink more water and, maybe not drink soda, you'll feel better. And it's like, but just because I learned for myself, hey, I'm not drinking enough water. I need to drink more water. So I've always got bottles of water with me, and I'm refilling them and getting other ones and constantly drinking water because, well, most of my body's water, wouldn't you know it? And if we don't, we're not healthy. And it's just so hard for people to even know what I'm saying. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Drinking water? I drink water. I got my soda. What do you? Yeah. Big gulp.
Yeah, all these like advice we get from our parents, right? Like drink more water, exercise more, eat healthy, have plenty of sleep. Don't go to sleep too late. Like all of this advice, very good advice we got from our parents, our grandparents, And I think, they actually are more helpful than taking more medicine, taking more advanced medicine.
How about this word or two words? Simple truths, right? Those are
Exactly.
simple
Yeah.
truths of life, right? Start there.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep your fit. Like all those, like, you don't really need to spend money of that. I would say it's a lifestyle. Change your lifestyle. This can all help. Like just start from little things in your life, like start drinking more water. Have a habit. Like, I would suggest like make more tea for yourself. Tea leaves.
Oh, and there's so many different kinds and different benefits that you can get from the teas. You can grow some of your own leaves. Wonderful.
Yeah, and herb teas, like
Yeah.
not just tea itself, but also herb tea. There are like zillions type of herb teas, and many of them have medical benefits. Like you always choose the right herb tea according to your need, right? According to your mood, like however you like it, and that's also a good way to encourage yourself to drink more water.
And so this is, I think, part of what I'll just focus on that we'll probably, I think we're getting ready to close out maybe, but just look at, so started talking about like nature and nurture. So there's these systems around us, there's these ideas around us that teach us, control us, influence us. We can find some of those real solid things in our lives, right? So some of those things we learned from our parents. Wash your hands. Good idea. You can know the truth. You'll be healthier. People around you will be healthier. Wash your hands. Brush your teeth. These types of things. Your teeth will last longer. I didn't do good with that myself. Just sleep when you're supposed to sleep, right? Eat healthy food. So when we look at our lives right now, look at the things we're doing and consider, why are we doing it? Is this really my choice? Because we've both found in our lives there's things that we've done, there's things that we do, things that we're doing now that aren't really so much our choice, but we've kind of been influenced that way. That ad caught my attention, so I bought that thing I didn't need, whatever it is. And then as we see that, we can make adjustments. One thing I tell people is you have a choice. No matter what, you have a choice. And there are better choices and not so good choices.
Yeah, speaking about choice, I also thought about, in the ancient Chinese literature, like I read about, like, people always admired those who can um, discipline themselves. Like in small things, they discipline themselves, even though like nobody would watch them, they would discipline themselves. Like I remember there was a story like about a man um, who would for many years of his career he was like very bored because he was not getting any attention from his supervisor. So he exercised every day by carrying bricks from his yard to his like room, and then carry them back from the room to his yard. Like he did that back and forth every day, just to keep himself active and exercise himself. And eventually, he got the opportunity. He was promoted into an important position, and he was still fit. Although he was much older than before, but he was still fit. He was still able to do, the right work because of the exercise he stick to. And that was just a small stories about like a discipline, a long term, and have a habit. I would say habit is very important. Like stick to some good habit, like go to sleep early. Have enough sleep, go to sleep early, and get up early, and do the exercise and eat healthy. This should all become habit, and you can start little by little. You don't have to say, okay, today, like, I'm going to change it all over, and you give up after 3 days. You can start from one thing each time, like go to sleep a little bit early every day. Instead like 2 a.m. Now you can go to sleep at midnight. And maybe next time you can go to sleep at like 11 or something. It's just like start from small things and stick to it. I think like many traditional culture teach that, like and many religion also have this kind of teachings. Um, but you see, I agree with you. Or we all have a choice, and we can all like choose to live a better life, a more healthy life, instead of like being influenced by outside information.
And that's so important to me. It's like, I want to live my life the way I want to live it. And I want everyone around me to be able to do the same. And even if they don't like me and they want to do something different, I mean, I don't want people around me that want to kill me. But if you can have different views and we can talk, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Let's both respect each other. Let's live that life, you know. And I think about those basics for myself. I don't know. We got to preaching when we talk about water and eating healthy and stuff. I don't know where we were going there. Don't go. But I remember years ago they talk about like having someone, you know, to exercise, to move, you know, very overweight and just not moving a lot. And it's like, why don't you just park a few spots further away from the store when you go to the store so you have to walk a little further, you know? Or even in the store, if you're going to go buy your food anyway, why don't you go get something at that end and then walk over to the other end? They're nicely air conditioned anyway, you know, enjoy it, right? And, you know, walk a little bit further. Well, I work with individuals with disabilities, and that was one of the things we would do to help them get more exercises at the store. We wouldn't just walk a quick circuit, you know, go different places. And it's, I think we can get angry sometimes in our lives when we hear these little things and stuff, and that it's up to us to make a difference in our own lives. There's a real kind of victim mentality that's in the world today, and people want to blame everybody else for where they're at and who they are and all these things. And you have a choice. So just sitting there and saying you can't do anything, I don't believe that. I think no matter where somebody is, they can do something for themselves first, really. And then as they're healthier and they're stronger, they know the truth, they're able to live their life in a way. They got, you know, security. You got your basic Laszlo's, you know, they got security, they got shelter, those types of things. Then being able to have others and to be able to share that with others, and just that natural, you know, because I think of the oxygen mask on the airplane, right? If it falls down, Mom, you put that on first so you can take care of the child, right? You're not going to help anybody if you can't do anything. So for me, the biggest thing is just any individual, just start with yourself, with your spouse, if you have a spouse, family, your home, your neighborhood, where you work, and just see what you can do to have a healthier, more in line with nature and what's good around you, and how you can help others to be able to do the same and encourage others to do the same. I think, does that make sense?
I like what you said. Like first is like the victim mentality. Like I mean, I had experienced that when I was in China, right? Although I love reading ancient literature, I gained a lot of like spiritual enlightenments from that. But I also like was after all it was communist China, and the whole mentality was like blaming others for all the conflicts in your life, right? Like you blame, say, oh, that guy's too rich, he took all my money. Those people like they don't deserve it because they're from a good family and I'm from a poor family. And all these mentalities, whenever you have problem, you blame others. And I only learned this after I came to the US, after I started to practice Falun Gong in 1998. And this is a traditional Chinese body and mind practice based on the principle of truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. And what fascinated me the most, and when I first read about Falun Gong, was the principle, truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. And in the explanation, it's like you always look at yourself whenever you have conflicts. Always look inward. We call it look inward. Because in this world, you cannot change others. Nobody have to change for you. You can only change yourself. If there's something you can do to yourself, you improve yourself. We call it cultivation. It's like a self-improvement, right? And if you cannot, it's not really anything wrong with your behavior, you need to look at your mentality. Like it may be the same thing. Like for example, my Wi-Fi failed, right? Like my laptop cannot connect to Wi-Fi. If you have a very negative mentality, you blame outside, say, hey, this is so annoying. I cannot connect to Wi-Fi. But if you have a very positive mentality, say, hey, I now have an opportunity to learn something new, like how to set up my network. I never had this problem before, right? How exciting! I can learn something new to manage this system. And see, like this different mentality can look at the same thing, in a totally opposite way. And then you become so happy about what you're experiencing, right? So I truly like the way like you change your mentality. You can look at the world in a different way, and you change your mentality. You can look at yourself in a different way. Say, I never knew that. I was not compassionate. I was blaming my father. Give me so much restriction and turned my home into a prison. I can never go out to play with others, right? But I can also change my mentality. I can understand what he went through as an intellectual post Cultural Revolution. Like he almost died from the persecution, and he was worried about me, right? And that was the best action he can take to protect me. And who knows, maybe if I went out, right, I could have been killed by someone, right? And the whole thing about keeping me detained at home was miserable, but also gave me the opportunity to explore ancient Chinese literature. So, nobody can ask for everything in this world. You gain something, you lose something. But if you change your mentality, you can look at it in a very positive way. You can have the compassion for others who put you into that situation. And you can be grateful for what you already have. And I think that's the best we can give to ourselves. I mean, the truth and compassion and also tolerance.
And that's where the battle really is in our minds. It's in our thoughts, because when the different thoughts we have changes how we interpret what we're seeing, the perceptions that we have. And so it's so important for our minds to have a firm foundation. So consider who's teaching us, right? Consider where we're learning from. What's our source that we're getting things from? I can give you a hint. The modern news media is not going to be a good source. I mean, a TV series is not going to be a good source, right? So what's forming our thoughts? Because our thoughts are formed in some way, and we have a consciousness. We're able to make decisions. So again, we have choice, we have control with our thoughts, right? Just because someone tells us something doesn't mean we have to accept it or reject it. We have a choice. The breaking down that control, kind of that brainwashing thing, is taking away that choice and saying, this is what you believe, this is what it's going to be. And that's really the time we're in, throughout our culture, all around the world, being influenced by all these other things. So consider your sources, consider your thoughts, look to ancient writings, great place to look, history, those types of things. And I really encourage people to learn your personal history. Why are you where you're at right now? Consider that. The town you're in. Even if you're a young person, why did your parents move there? Why are you in that neighborhood? You can learn things, and then you can look around you and you can see these are the things that are good. These are the things that are healthy, and encourage those things, be part of that. And the things that aren't, make a difference in those areas.
Yeah, I love the part about history because whatever history was long, right? Whatever the story was left was the most brilliant part of it, or the worst lesson you remember. Otherwise, people forget about it, right? Like the reason they stay, all these legends can last because they have some value, right? Like, you admire those good people who did good deeds and all those bad people who suffered, right? Like, you learn from them. I mean, we are talking about history, then we're talking about all the wisdom accumulated for thousands of years, and not only like for for like those big, brilliant, famous people, but also from your own family, like your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents. What did they do? Like in their whole life, like for like 80, 70 years, like what is the best lesson you gain from them? Like I think each person in their life journey, they have gained some wisdom. And if we can learn from their wisdom, I think that's the best benefit we can give ourselves.
That's awesome. Well, I think we're going to end just before the hour, so getting ready to close out. So, any last thoughts you have?
It's been wonderful. I just feel like I think the last thought is like stick to the little progress you can make. Like, park a few blocks further and walk to your like, grocery shopping place. I mean, now I walk to work every day, right? It's just 30-minute walk, but I enjoy it very much once it become a habit. So enjoy all the little progress you get closer to the truth and stick to it and don't give up. I think that's the best encouragement we can give, a best gift we can give for ourselves.
And the beauty, and I agree with that 100%. And the beauty of it is, we're not sharing this with others, saying we've made it to this point, right? We're in the process ourselves. So for yourself, even today, the Wi-Fi not working, the other computer, and turning it, demonstrating what we're talking about, right? My knee, probably I need to have surgery on it, but right now I'm going to work it. I'm going to build up the muscles, going to the fitness, riding my bike that I hadn't rode in 20 years or whatever. I got a long way to go, but making choices. So that's why I like the idea of the journey of truth. We're both still on it, still working it, and we can encourage each other to keep doing it. So thank you.
Yeah, can I share with you my last favorite quote in
Yes,
Chinese
please.
literature, ancient Chinese literature? So it translated to English basically means cultivate yourself, make yourself a better person. And then once you have yourself as a better person, a good person, you can bring balance to your family. You're going to have a good family. And once you have a good family, you can run a good country because a country is like a big family. And once you can run a good country, you are going to bring peace to the world because the world is formed by many, many good countries. So that's my what I want to share to all the
That's
audience today.
beautiful. That's perfect. I agree 100%. There was an old commercial in America, and they said ancient Chinese secret. So,
Yes.
but it's actually wisdom. Yeah,
Yes.
wisdom goes across language and culture. So, all right, I am stopping the stream.